Welcome to BitcoinCenter. I'm Paul Tarantino.
And I'm Cedric Youngelman.
On today's show, we're going to cover Jerome Powell promising not to launch a CBDC,
the RFK Tulsi Trump cabinet,
and the Doge Treasury inspection finding all sorts of mishaps.
And Gabe Higgins from Blockspaces joined us to talk about his exciting project scaling Bitcoin.
But before we do this, I want to talk about GameStop becoming a Bitcoin bank. What do you think about this?
I think it's fantastic. I love seeing these tiny corporations, public companies start speculating and attacking the dollar. Why wouldn't they put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, watching what MicroStrategy has been doing, what Semler Scientific has been doing, what MetaPlanet is doing? This is exciting. I think
Let me play devil's advocate here. Like if 40% or more of the publicly listed companies are zombies, do they all become Bitcoin banks at some point?
Why wouldn't they? Well, I don't know. What is this Bitcoin bank? I don't know if everyone gets to be a Bitcoin bank like MicroStrategy. That's part of the rumor I haven't really heard too much about.
That was the way they talked about it in the article.
Okay.
I agree. It's more Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Maybe it's NFTs. Maybe it's gaming related tokens as well. I don't know. It's all speculation at this point.
Like trying to build an ecosystem and everyone's trying to use. Yeah, so that I don't know where that's going and how much of a vision they have there and what they'll be able to execute. But I do think it makes sense to use Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a reserve asset to put volatility into the stock, to attract interest into the stock. I see Bitcoin as sort of a social network here for securities in the way that companies are coming together and kind of get exposure and momentum from just buying Bitcoin and actually building their balance sheet.
Right. Or is it just another .com moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where I think some of these are going to end up. I don't think every one of these companies are going to be able to pull this off. And I think some companies are doing this as sort of a last-ditch effort.
I could see potentially a future where MicroStrategy is buying other companies because they're buying that Bitcoin at a discount based on the profitability or lack thereof of the underlying operation.
Right. Maybe that's another tool Michael Saylor rolls out on Wall Street to weaponize, his attack on the dollar. I'm not sure. That's interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah. We'll see.
Well, then, Paul, what do you think about Jerome Powell's promise not to roll out a retail CBDC?
That was okay. Great promise. I haven't. He's made similar comments in the past, so it's not necessarily new news. He did address FedWire, which is real time USD payments between the big commercial banks. No CBDC, no mandate to do a CBDC. All great. My biggest concern is, we at one point we thought we had an open internet, and then we got the public-private partnership in Meta and Google and the whole ball of wax, right? So does Tether or USDC become the public-private CBDC?
That's where I think this is going. I mean, notice he said one key word there is retail. That's doing a lot of work in the sentence. Yeah. So it looks like we're getting some form of a CBDC then, maybe in central banking. But I do think that this is setting us up to roll out a public-private partnership where we're going to get a CBDC, just not from the Federal Reserve.
Right.
I also think we're getting into sort of this moment where the Federal Reserve didn't kill itself, sort of like Epstein didn't kill himself, but they're killing the Federal Reserve on purpose, and they're going to roll out, some sort of blockchain tech to kind of deal with money printing.
Look, all the central banks around the planet are connected by a few families that own them.
Right.
They're all working on CBDCs. So for the Federal Reserve to tell us they're not, you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
So before we go any further, RFK and Tulsi were confirmed. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's RFK is really exciting. I really hope he gets to carry out what he's been looking to do. The Tulsi one, I think, is kind of funny. I mean, she is in the psychological operations command unit of the United States military. And, since the United States is now allowed to sign up their own people, I think this is fascinating that she's in charge of all the intelligence that Trump's going to see. So I'm really, I don't know. I think this is really fascinating.
I love the fact, though, that she is now overseeing the agency to put her on the no-fly list.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, you can ask for better karma.
She's also been in both parties, though, right? Like sort of like Trump. And so she's a sort of a political player here. So I don't see this as sort of this big anti-establishment or outsider type thing that everyone's sort of trumpeting it as.
Yeah, if anybody's an outsider, just from the life they've lived, the stuff they've said, and the battles they fought, it's RFK. Would you agree?
I'm not convinced 100%. No, I'm not. I still think it remains to be seen what powers they give him and what he actually does. But I think it's encouraging.
It is encouraging.
I still think we're getting just a massive. I think we're just getting played again, honestly, and getting duped. But I'm trying to stay optimistic.
I appreciate the optimism.
Well, what do you think about Doge?
Doge to me is, I mean, what they did with the Treasury this week, that was super exciting because I had envisioned all sorts of corruption through the NGOs. I had no idea that at the Treasury level, it was this inept.
Right.
And I want to give a shout out to @EcoLovesYou on Twitter, or X, sorry. He did a great report of this and he nailed it when he said there's 100 billion annually to accounts with no social security number, no identification at all. Half of that, 50 billion a year, the Treasury itself admitted is unequivocal fraud. That is mind-melting that he got the Treasury to admit to fraud.
Right.
So, I mean, that like, if people don't appreciate that, I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the fraud is grotesque, but I think that this is still driving at the same thing of moving sort of payments onto blockchain, and it's sold under the guise of we're eliminating waste and we're going to be more efficient. But every administration has said that. I mean, you could go back to the tapes. Obama rolled out sort of efficiency committees at the beginning of his terms and said, Congress isn't getting enough done to cut down on spending and waste. Mm-hmm. Clinton and Gore said the same thing in the 90s. So this is and I think, again, they're just going to kill the dollar and they're going to kill the Federal Reserve, but they're going to roll out something that is far worse. This is not, I think, about pure freedom and transparency.
If you don't have Bitcoin, you're not going to have your freedom. That's the bottom line.
Sure.
Because I think you're 100% right. If we move in the guise of stopping corruption, which I think is great, we move to blockchain-based payment networks that are auditable.
Sure.
Everybody's going to be, Red Wave is going to be cheering like mad.
Right.
And I have to, I'm excited about it too, but you're right. It leads to a tech surveillance state that could be very Orwellian in the future.
This is not leading to a Valhalla or utopic society.
It's like
where the government is all of a sudden way smaller and out of our lives and only spending money on sensible things like property rights and defending the borders. And I think that the corruption they are exposing is carefully curated and designed to be shared with us at this moment. Sure. And they're not sharing all of the corruption or the new corruption.
It's kind of interesting because to me, it's so reminiscent of every Bitcoin cycle we've seen so far, where you find Bitcoin and then you find blockchain and then you want to change the world. Right. It's like the government's going through that in real time and they're either completely missing the point of Bitcoin, or we are not the Trojan horse invading the state. The state let us through the door and put chains around the Trojan horse and said, don't ever let these guys out.
Well, there's been a lot of govern me harder lately, Daddy, going on.
So, all right, so our guest today.
Yeah, well, this is BitcoinCenter. Up next on Inside Bitcoin is Gabe Higgins. Welcome to BitcoinCenter.
All right, for today's segment on Inside Bitcoin, we're joined by Gabe Higgins of Blockspaces. And Gabe, you're working on some very interesting stuff over there related to scaling Bitcoin over the Lightning Network. Can you just give us just a quick overview on the innovation that you're working on and where you think how you think this is going to impact the everyday Bitcoiner?
Yeah, so we've been in business for a number of years, but we've toyed with all of the crypto things, and everything comes back to Bitcoin eventually. And once we really started becoming integrated with Lightning, became an LSP, we saw the potential, and now with the ability to tokenize things, stable coins, it's the fastest way to settle Bitcoin, which is the asset to have and to utilize as a financial apparatus. So that's why we decided to build everything on Lightning.
And so what is it that you're building on Lightning that is going to really ramp up the volume that's flowing through the network now?
Yeah, so we have a really unique use case for utilizing Lightning payment channels, and that's not really at this juncture utilizing the network, as it were. It's really isolating that payment channel to do bilateral transactions between two counterparties. And the way we're orchestrating that, we actually created a state machine that could be embedded into the Lightning nodes, and then you can get smart contract like functionality out of within that Lightning channel. So that's what we're bringing in. We're targeting institutions that are going to bring a lot of liquidity. They're doing really large trades, large volumes of Bitcoin transactions. So we think that will eventually bleed into doing transactions on the network itself.
Because there's a lot there, Gabe. There's a lot like to dissect.
What kind of contracts or financial expressions will we see institutions use these tools for?
Yeah, the first obvious one is collateralized Bitcoin loans. That's a huge, well understood market already. Although we've seen lots of collapses in the past of these kinds of lending products. With our solution, the Bitcoin is locked into the Lightning channel itself. So it can't be rehypothecated. You know it's there. It's self-verifiable on both sides, both counterparties. So we think that is the way forward to bring more assurance and confidence in these kinds of products that can be done when they're done properly. And we think we found the right balance between security, privacy, and usability for the end users.
Right. So like lending today, a lot of it is done with multi-sig, right? Where you're gonna move your Bitcoin into a multi-sig and you're gonna receive USDT. With this, how is the custody of that Bitcoin done? Is it held at the node? Is it your node or?
Yeah, great question. So the way we set up our system is that we have watch-only nodes and we institute remote signing nodes on behalf of each counterparty. So we run all the infrastructure. We partnered with Voltage as well as and those are who are actually own the nodes, but they don't own the keys, which is important. So through the onboarding process, the end user can pick their own password to secure their wallet of their node. And we just set up all the underlying infrastructure and coordinate everything. And then, of course, upload our Lightning Smart channel system into the nodes itself. So that's how that is all kind of orchestrated. So we don't have access to the funds. We can't by design, and neither can either side of the counterparty. And as we know, HTLCs, Lightning channels, they are themselves a 2 of 2 multisig. So we're taking advantage of that security.
What do you think this does for Lightning? I mean, we're already kind of throttled a little bit in Lightning. There's only so much dollar volume I could push through there today. It is based on, sort of like the connecting to the right nodes. How does this change that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, our system isn't at current state not tied to the network itself, but that is a future prospect that we have plans on doing. But once that happens, right, we'll have already onboarded lots of institutions that are pushing lots of liquidity through channels. And once we just connect those nodes to the broader network, that's when you can see a lot of volume flowing. I think there's going to be different hubs for different user types, right? You have your self-custody wallets or custodial Lightning wallets, service providers. And then I think you're going to have a whole new range of institutional service providers that are only connecting to each other for large amounts of liquidity movements. So I think that's how this is all going to kind of play out in the end.
So, Gabe, it seems like the quick upshot or takeaway from here is that this is going to lead to draining of sats and Bitcoin on things like exchanges, and people will be maybe more incentivized to move it into channels on Lightning. What is your takeaway?
Yeah, I think that's the case, right? You need to build the infrastructure for institutions to move that liquidity. And since, our position is Bitcoin is pristine collateral asset, it's a matter of time till other financial institutions realize that and use Bitcoin as a way of protecting themselves from cascading failures in the financial system. So every financial institution is going to want to hold the Bitcoin, and they're going to need to operate on that Bitcoin as well. So it's not just buy and hold. It's going to be utilized as collateral to do business. So we're building that infrastructure and rolling that out here soon.
Thank you, Gabe. That was great information, great insight. We look forward to what you're building and learning more. I hope you'll come back and join us again. Stay tuned. Up next, we have Michelle's weekly Black Pill, and this is BitcoinCenter. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of these great guests that are on our show. And if you have cash burning a hole in your mattress or buried in the backyard, turn that cash into Bitcoin and build a prosperous future. Find a Byte Federal ATM near you and make the future bright.
This week's Black Pill is USAID. It's not USAID. It's actually the U.S. Agency for International Development, intentionally named to mislead you into believing that they're providing aid of some sort to someone somewhere, but they're not. The agency is actually used to fund all sorts of government initiatives coming out of the intelligence agencies and various departments of the government. Why are we as Bitcoiners subject to KYC, KYT, KYB, all of the AML rules and regulations? We're not allowed to have private transactions. We're labeled criminals, and they claim that we're funding terrorists, when in fact, it's actually our government that is doing all of this to the tune of billions of dollars. If you want real freedom and true sovereignty, we must end the corruption. The only way to end the corruption is by defunding the governments and their corrupt organizations. Opt out of fiat entirely. Save in Bitcoin, spend in Bitcoin. Take the black pill, it's actually orange.
Wow, Michelle, thank you for such uplifting comments. But now maybe on to something a little more bullish, Cedric. Let's do the lightning round.
Sounds good.
Trump's going to axe the penny. What do you think about this?
I mean, I kind of love it. I've always wondered when are they going to get rid of these coins that don't make sense to print or mint. But I think it's also, headed towards a cashless society. What do you think about it?
Well, I do agree with the logic of just like it costs more than it's worth. So yeah, let's axe it. I don't really, most of my pennies go in a basket somewhere and I never use them again. So yeah, let's get rid of the penny. I'm all for that, but at least we're not deleting $500 bills like they did in India and other places, or the euro.
Well,
right?
Is this where it's going? Is this a form of soft controls at some level?
I think the U.S. gets cashless based on death rate. It's like, how fast does the older generation stop using cash? It's just going to be an organic transition. I hope. But I mean, cash is our only sovereign instrument besides Bitcoin.
Right. It's one of those private instruments.
Yeah, exactly.
Cash, yeah.
Exactly.
And they started during COVID. It was like cash is dirty, cash is bad. I mean, I agree cash is trash, but that's a Bitcoin thing, not so much a cashless society.
Yeah, and the depreciation value of currency, fiat, how fast? I mean, those pennies are worthless. Let's be it real. So yeah, no need to print them. But let's hope to God this is not leading to cashless society.
I don't know. It's just move towards a cashless society and stable coins even.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Goldman buying $2 billion in Bitcoin ETFs and options?
Yeah. Okay. Again, it's the ETF. Strike and a miss. You guys are buying a security. I understand why you're buying security. I understand you want to own securities. You don't want to custody the coin. It's level 1. It's an intro. So it could be worse. They could be not participating. But let's hope that it moves to real Bitcoin.
Is this a bullish sign? Is this a signal to Goldman Sachs clients?
Oh, I would think so.
Right.
But of course, they're going to sell the security and they're going to get a commission.
Sure.
They want to lend against it. So maybe once we get lending facilities on Wall Street against real Bitcoin.
Right. Well, speaking of sort of introductory moves, I mean, Abu Dhabi just bought 436 million of Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know why they didn't buy 420 million or 469 million. That'd be a little more fun. But
that's just a featherweight.
Okay.
For
a baby step. I mean,
for a sovereign wealth fund of that size. I mean,
still 500 million.
I'm guessing it's like 0.5%.
Yeah, it's probably not
at
material to the
most.
fund, but it's still, I think, maybe material to the nation and maybe sort of move towards Bitcoin.
Yeah, I just don't
Seems kinda
understand.
interesting.
I don't understand why they start so slowly. I guess it's because they've got a board and they've got people that they've got to make happy. But it's a good start.
And what do you think about these state strategic Bitcoin reserves?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Oh, you do?
I do. I think states building their own Bitcoin strategic reserve is going to put more pressure, assuming they're real Bitcoin. Again, I'm assuming they're real Bitcoin, going to put pressure on the government, on the federal government to start doing the right thing. So, when it's all 50 states have a Bitcoin reserve, then what are they waiting for with the SBR at the Treasury level?
Right. I mean, I guess Bitcoin is for everyone, but I'm a little perturbed by all this rooting on the government's buying Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, 100%.
I thought we want to separate money from state.
I'm hoping that people are looking at this and going, if it's good enough for my state, why is it not good enough for me?
Sure.
Why, if my state approves it, why should I be afraid of it? Because if people are missing the life raft to their prosperous future, everyone around you that you govern me harder, daddy, like you said earlier, they're saying they want Bitcoin. Why do you not want it?
Well, or maybe a lot of people in the states are saying, constituents are saying, why are you buying this crazy newfangled internet money? What do you think about MetaPlanet and MSCI Japan Index?
Again, it's more proof that this is going to become a global game theory. Where companies are taking advantage of having Bitcoin. If we're going to have strategy Bitcoin on every continent, that's a lot better than having strategy Bitcoin just in the United States.
Yeah, it does seem like securities and the dollar is a great layer 2 for Bitcoin in and of itself. What do you think about Cathie Wood and her $1.5 million?
I was just about
prediction?
to ask you that. I know that's your favorite topic.
I think it's ridiculous. She's like the Jim Cramer of Bitcoin. She's always wrong. So I'm not excited about this prediction that much, but it kind of lines up with my prediction of 1.6 million by like April 2026.
April 2026, 1.6 million.
Yeah. So
I like it.
That's where I think it's going. So I guess me and Cathie have something in common here. I wish we didn't. We'll see where it goes. What do you think about Tesla buying 11,000 Bitcoin this quarter?
Proof of FASB rules,
sure.
Coming to fruition. There's a benefit now to disclosing your Bitcoin. There's a benefit now to their earnings. It's not a new purchase, so people need to understand that. They didn't go out and buy 11,000 Bitcoin. They've had this for some time, but there's been very little reason to disclose it, to open it up, because prior to this, it was just marking it down, right? So I think this is good, because if it starts to show up in earnings at Strategy Bitcoin, at Tesla, and at others that hold Bitcoin,
driving earnings, that could be a game changer. Maybe S&P 500 inclusion for MicroStrategy down the road.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. See you next week on BitcoinCenter.